Have you ever forgotten where you put your keys, or walked into a room and wondered, what did I come here for again? This may seem normal with age, but what if I told you that these seemingly harmless lapses could be the first signs of something much more serious? The truth is that, according to the Alzheimer's Association, more than 6 million Americans live with dementia, and the number is rapidly increasing among people over 60. But the scariest part is that the disease doesn't start with a sudden memory collapse. It creeps in silently, with symptoms so subtle that most people ignore them, until it's too late. And here's the biggest mistake almost everyone makes: waiting for a diagnosis before taking action. By that point, the brain may already have suffered irreversible damage. What few people know is that there are early signs that your body may already be giving, and recognizing those signs can literally change your destiny. In this video, you'll discover the 10 early symptoms of dementia that almost no one associates with the disease. And the best part, I'll show you how to interpret these signs, what to do in each case, and how to protect your brain with simple, natural, and scientifically proven actions before the damage becomes permanent. So stay with me until the end of the video, because the last symptom is the most surprising of all. It happens during sleep, and it may be the only visible sign that something serious is beginning to happen inside your brain. And if you've already noticed this symptom in a family member, pay close attention now. If you care about your memory, your independence, and want to keep your mind sharp for many years, subscribe to the channel now. That way you'll make sure this kind of information keeps reaching you. First sign, your sense of smell fades. Imagine that. All of a sudden, the smell of your breakfast seems weaker. Or that perfume you've always used doesn't have the same effect anymore. Many people think this is just part of getting older. But science shows that loss of smell is one of the first and most ignored signs of dementia, especially Alzheimer's type. According to researchers from the University of Pennsylvania, up to 85% of Alzheimer's patients experienced loss of smell years before any obvious cognitive symptoms. And we're not just talking about not smelling strong odors. We're talking about progressive deterioration of a brain region called the olfactory bulb, which is closely connected to the hippocampus, the part responsible for memory formation. It's as if the brain is giving us a warning, only in silence. If you or someone close to you has noticed that smells are less intense, that food seems tasteless, or that it's difficult to identify specific scents, like smoke, perfume, or even the smell of your favorite soap, this could be an early warning sign. But the good news is, there's a way forward. Neuroscience shows that some practices can stimulate this region of the brain and even improve smell perception, which strengthens overall cognitive health. One of them is called olfactory therapy, a simple technique you can do at home using natural essential oils like lavender, lemon, eucalyptus, and clove. Just smell each one for about 20 seconds, twice a day, focusing on the aroma. This helps reactivate the neural circuits responsible for smell, and can have positive effects on memory and attention. Additionally, foods rich in zinc, such as pumpkin seeds, cooked spinach, and lean meat, help regenerate olfactory receptors. There are contraindications for people with respiratory allergies or chronic rhinitis. They should avoid very strong or synthetic oils. And of course, don't overdo it. Start with mild aromas now. If nothing is done, and the loss of smell continues to progress, this may be a sign that other areas of the brain are also being silently affected, and that the circuits connected to memory are beginning to fail. In other words, ignoring this symptom could mean losing a valuable window for prevention and reversal. And if you found that tip interesting, wait until you discover the next sign, which may show up in your vocabulary and change the way you communicate without you realizing it. Second sign, simple words start to slip away. You're in a relaxed conversation. You want to say something simple like refrigerator, but can only remember that thing that cools the food. Or you start forgetting names of people you've known for years, or even common everyday words. It seems harmless at first, but this kind of frequent verbal slip can be much more than distraction. Science calls this anomia, a difficulty in remembering words that were once familiar. And according to a study published in Neurology, people who frequently show this pattern have a significantly increased risk of developing dementia in the following years. It's as if the words are in a file inside the brain, and someone started renaming the folders or erasing the labels. The problem is not just with memory, it's with the disconnection between thought and language. One of the first signs of degeneration in the temporal cortex, the brain region responsible for language and comprehension. But don't panic. This condition can be reversed in the early stages. Studies show that the brain can be reprogrammed, and one of the most effective ways is through a simple exercise called active reading with narration. Here's how it works. you read a small passage from a book out loud and then try to explain what you read in your own words. This practice activates three key areas of the brain at the same time: memory, language, and attention, creating new neural connections. Another powerful strategy is to practice word association games. This can be through an app with friends, or even using household objects: chair, wood, forest, nature, peace. This type of game, when done for 10 minutes a day, improves word access and reduces the frequency of blank outs. And we can't forget about nutrition. Consuming choline, found in egg yolks and lean meats, helps protect the myelin sheath, which is like insulation for brain wires, making it easier to transmit words and ideas. But attention, if these verbal slips become frequent and start to interfere with social interactions, they can lead to frustration, isolation, and even accelerate cognitive decline due to lack of stimulation. The person speaks less, is less understood, withdraws, and the brain, no longer being challenged, enters decline more quickly. And if this sign has already bothered you in a recent conversation, wait until you hear the next one, because it involves something even more intimate: your emotions. Third, sin. Your emotions change without explanation. Have you ever felt more irritated than usual over something silly? Or maybe you found yourself crying out of nowhere without understanding why. Sudden emotional changes without apparent reason are not just age sensitivity. They can be one of the first alarms that something is happening in the brain. In people developing dementia, the limbic system, responsible for regulating emotions, begins to be affected long before memory fails. This means that a person may begin to experience anxiety, anger, apathy, or sadness in unusual patterns, even when everything around them seems normal. It's as if the emotions take on a life of their own, and the person no longer has control over what they feel. And here's an alarming fact. According to the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease, persistent mood changes can precede a dementia diagnosis by up to 10 years. This is because the degeneration of certain brain regions, such as the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus, affects not only memory, but also emotional processing and decision-making. But here's the good news. The brain can be trained to regain that balance. The regular practice of mindfulness, for example, has proven effects on emotional regulation in the elderly. 5 minutes a day of mindful attention to breathing or bodily sensations help reduce brain inflammation and rebalance the activity of the amygdala, which, when overactive, causes disproportionate emotional reactions. Another powerful practice is keeping an emotional journal. By writing down what you felt, when you felt it, and what was happening at the time, the brain starts to create conscious patterns, reducing internal confusion. This works like an emotional translation exercise, something that can make all the difference in preventing mental decline. And of course, the role of serotonin, the famous happiness hormone, cannot be ignored. Foods like bananas, oats, sunflower seeds, and even a small piece of dark chocolate help the body produce more serotonin naturally. But be careful. Avoid comfort ultra-processed foods like cakes, sweets, and chips. They cause glucose spikes that worsen emotional instability in the medium term. Only those with dietary restrictions or specific illnesses have contraindications, such as kidney failure in the case of some seeds and legumes. But in most cases, these practices are safe, accessible, and bring visible results in just a few weeks. And what happens if you ignore these emotional signs? Unfortunately, mood swings can drive away friends and family, lead to isolation, reduce cognitive stimulation, and accelerate brain deterioration. It's a domino effect: less connection, less stimulation, less memory, and the next symptom may raise even more alarm because it's linked to losing orientation in time and space, something that can even put your safety at risk. Fourth sign, you start to get lost in time and space. Have you ever woken up without knowing what day it was, or walked into a supermarket and forgotten why you went there? These occasional episodes may seem normal with age, but if they're becoming frequent, it's time to pay attention. Losing the sense of time and space is one of the most dangerous symptoms, and unfortunately, one of the most ignored in the early stages of dementia. What many people don't know is that this disorientation doesn't appear out of nowhere. It results from progressive degeneration of the parietal cortex and the hippocampus, areas of the brain responsible for processing location and temporal sequence. And it goes beyond forgetting appointments or mixing up dates. Some people begin to get lost in their own neighborhood, have difficulty following familiar routes, or take a long time to understand whether it's morning or afternoon. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Neuroscience revealed that patients with these symptoms, even without a formal diagnosis, already showed significant reduction in gray matter in these brain regions. But this doesn't mean decline is inevitable. There are practices that specifically strengthen these brain functions and, when done regularly, significantly improve spatial perception and the sense of time. One of the most effective is active navigation. Whenever possible, try leaving the house and making simple routes without relying on GPS. Memorize landmarks, create mental routes, and challenge your brain to find alternative paths. This exercise stimulates the hippocampus in a way similar to physical training. And yes, it can grow again when properly stimulated. In addition, there is a curious and powerful method: spatial mental maps. Take a piece of paper and try drawing the route from your house to the pharmacy or to a friend's house. The more details you include, street corners, signs, signals, the more you activate your spatial memory. In terms of nutrition, some nutrients have a direct effect on these cognitive functions. Vitamin B1 thiamine, for example, is essential for converting glucose into energy within the brain. It is found in foods such as whole grains, lean pork, lentils, and nuts. But it's important to remember that people with alcoholism or chronic digestive problems have difficulty absorbing this vitamin, and in these cases, supplementation may be necessary under medical guidance. Ignoring this sign and doing nothing about it can lead to very dangerous situations. A person may start leaving the house and getting lost, forget where they parked the car, or even lose track of hours and days, which compromises autonomy, increases dependency on family members, and raises the risk of domestic accidents. Staying oriented in space and time is like keeping the helm steady on a boat in open sea. And the good news is that you can train that helm. You just need to know how, and you've already taken a great first step. And now that we've talked about space and time, get ready, because the next sign directly affects your physical and mental energy. It's something many associate with ordinary age-related tiredness, but it may be a silent indicator that the brain is crying out for help. Fifth sign, a fatigue that doesn't go away even after rest. Feeling tired after an intense day is normal. But when tiredness starts to appear for no reason early in the morning and lingers throughout the day, even after seemingly good nights of sleep, it's time to pay attention. This kind of deep fatigue that doesn't improve with rest may be one of the early signs that the brain is working harder than it should to perform simple tasks. A hallmark of the early stages of dementia, this mental and physical exhaustion is directly linked to mitochondrial dysfunction in the brain. In other words, the energy plants inside neurons begin to fail. This makes simple tasks, like organizing a schedule or remembering where you placed an object, require an immense effort from the nervous system. The body responds with slowness, drowsiness, and a constant feeling of exhaustion, even if, technically, the person has slept enough. And there's more. This type of fatigue is often linked to chronic neurocognitive inflammation, a silent but extremely damaging process. Research from Harvard University shows that this inflammation accelerates brain aging and can cause energy drops even in the very early stages of the disease. But there is a way out. The first and most impactful step is to adjust the deep sleep pattern, and that starts during the day. Exposure to natural light early in the morning helps regulate the circadian rhythm, reduces nighttime cortisol production, and supports the release of melatonin at the right time. Another powerful ally is low-intensity physical activity done consistently. Outdoor walks, for example, stimulate the production of serotonin and dopamine, neurotransmitters that combat both physical and mental fatigue. And before bed, small changes can make a big difference. Avoiding bright screens, reducing caffeine intake after 2 p.m., and having a light evening snack with foods rich in tryptophan, such as natural yogurt, banana, and oats. In terms of diet, the highlight goes to magnesium, an essential mineral for the energetic function of neurons. It's found in dark green leafy vegetables, nuts, pumpkin seeds, and even a square of dark chocolate. But be careful, excess calcium, common among seniors who take supplements without guidance, can interfere with magnesium absorption. That's why balance is always the key. Ignoring this type of fatigue can lead to a dangerous cycle. More sedentary behavior, more isolation, less brain stimulation, and an even faster decline in cognitive function. And worse, since fatigue is often invisible to others, the person may feel misunderstood, judged as lazy, or even depressed, when in fact, it's the brain crying out for help. And speaking of help, in the next section, I'll reveal something that could transform the way you protect your mind. A medicinal recipe that combines flavor and neuroscience with an ingredient you may already have in your fridge, but have probably never used. The right way. Sixth sign, your relationship with food changes, and you don't notice one of the most subtle and dangerous early signs of dementia is on your plate. But it's not just about forgetting meal times. The change begins almost imperceptibly. The person loses interest in foods they always enjoyed, begins to prefer sweeter or saltier dishes, or starts having difficulty identifying flavors. And over time, this completely alters their eating habits and appetite. According to studies published in Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience, this type of change is linked to alterations in the orbitofrontal cortex, the part of the brain that processes rewards, like the pleasure of eating, and more. People with mild cognitive impairment already show modifications in eating behavior up to 5 years before a formal diagnosis. But this doesn't just affect the joy of eating. These changes also hinder the intake of essential nutrients, weakening the brain even further. It's a vicious cycle. Fewer nutrients gives less protection, gives more inflammation, gives more cognitive decline. But this condition can be reversed with an intelligent nutritional approach. And one of the most powerful strategies is including what experts call synaptic saviors, foods rich in anti-inflammatory and neuroprotective compounds. And among all of them, one stands out: wild salmon prepared the right way. We're not talking about just any fish recipe. There is a specific preparation developed from scientific evidence that combines salmon with ingredients like turmeric, purple garlic, and cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil, all of which have a direct effect on protecting brain connections. This preparation creates a synergistic effect that helps reduce inflammation, improve neurogenesis, the formation of new neurons, and even restore recent memory. And the best part? It's a simple, tasty recipe with no expensive or hard-to-find ingredients. It can be made in less than 15 minutes, and what's most impressive is that it has already helped thousands of people with early signs of memory loss feel mentally sharper in just a few weeks. If you want to learn this complete recipe, with the ingredients, proportion, and the right times to maximize its effects on the brain, I've left a link in the first pinned comment of this video. There you'll understand how it works, why so many specialists are recommending this protocol, and what else can be done to shield your mind from aging. But only do that after watching this video to the end, because the next signs might be happening to you or someone in your family, and they can still be reversed in time. And the next symptom, by the way, may surprise you because it starts in your fingertips. 7th sign: your hands begin to fail before the mind. Have you ever tried to button a shirt and felt your fingers weren't as precise as they used to be? Or noticed that writing by hand has become slower with shakier letters? Sometimes, even holding a toothbrush or opening a package seems to take more effort than it should. That may seem like just a natural effect of aging, but the truth is that these subtle hand failures can be one of the first signs that the brain is starting to fail, even before memory shows any warning. Science explains this clearly. The areas of the brain responsible for fine motor movements, such as the parietal lobe and the basal ganglia, are closely linked to fine motor coordination. When these circuits begin to degrade, the fingers no longer respond as they used to, and this has solid scientific basis. A study from Columbia University revealed that seniors with subtle manual motor decline are up to 3 times more likely to develop dementia in the following years. In other words, when the hands start to fail, it might be the brain crying for help. But there are effective ways to train the brain and restore this control. A powerful practice is conscious tactile stimulation. Simple things like manipulating clay, identifying objects with closed eyes, or even writing by hand regularly can have a deep impact on brain connections. When you use your non-dominant hand, for daily tasks for example, you challenge your brain to work in new ways, and this stimulates neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to adapt, create new pathways, and keep cognitive health active. Activity is handwriting. Instead of typing on your phone, try writing notes, lists, or small memory fragments by hand. This simple habit activates brain regions that remain dormant due to excessive technology use, improving not only dexterity but also focus and the ability to articulate ideas. On the nutritional side, including sources of omega-3 in your routine, like fatty fish, ground flaxseed, or krill oil, helps protect motor synapses and reduce inflammation in nerve tissue. But beware, people who use blood thinners should talk to their doctor before starting any supplementation, especially with high doses of omega-3. Now, ignoring this sign can bring more serious consequences than one might imagine. Loss of finger control compromises basic activities like getting dressed, cooking, signing documents, and that undermines autonomy. When the elderly lose confidence in their own hands, they start avoiding tasks, become isolated, lose motivation. and cognitive decline speeds up. So, if you've dropped something without understanding why, or felt your hands are less agile lately, know that this may be an early warning, and there is still time to act. And speaking of early warnings, the next sign may be even more unexpected because it doesn't show up during the day, but deep in your sleep. Eighth sign. Your dreams change and reveal something the brain is hiding. Have you ever woken up after a strange dream, one of those that feel confusing, more intense than usual, or maybe found yourself agitated at night, as if acting out your dreams? These episodes are often ignored or treated as just a tired mind. But neuroscience is showing they can be one of the earliest and least understood signs of dementia. During REM sleep, that phase when the most vivid dreams occur, the brain is supposed to be relaxed, temporarily disconnecting the muscles in the body to prevent dangerous movements. But when this mechanism fails, and a person begins to move during dreams, or has excessively realistic and disturbing dreams, it may indicate that the brainstem is beginning to degenerate. And why is that important? Because this is precisely one of the regions affected in the early stages of neurodegenerative diseases, such as Lewy body dementia and even Alzheimer's. In fact, studies conducted by the Mayo Clinic have shown that people who experience REM sleep disorders with involuntary movements are up to 80% more likely to develop dementia within the next 10 years. And it doesn't stop there. It's not just the intense dreams or physical movements that matter. Other signs also deserve attention: talking during sleep, frequent nightmares, and feeling tired upon waking, even after an apparently long night. All of this indicates that the brain is not doing its job of nightly cleaning, which is essential to remove toxins associated with cognitive decline. Fortunately, there are ways to help the brain restore this cycle. One of the most effective is creating a nighttime routine that promotes natural melatonin production, the hormone that regulates sleep and helps the brain enter deep stages. This includes reducing exposure to blue light in the evening, having an early dinner with light foods, and using small practices like mindful breathing before bed. Another powerful ally is the regular consumption of foods rich in tryptophan, such as bananas, oats, chickpeas, and warm milk. This essential amino acid is involved in the synthesis of serotonin and melatonin, directly influencing the quality of dreams and deep sleep. For those with more severe difficulties, the inclusion of chamomile tea, mulungo, or lemon balm can be helpful, always with proper guidance, of course, especially if sedative medications are being used. And it is essential to keep the bedroom cool, dark, and quiet, as the environment directly influences the quality of restorative sleep. Now, ignoring these signs may cause the brain to spend entire nights in incomplete mode, accumulating toxic residues like beta amyloid, a substance directly linked to Alzheimer's. And the worst part, since no one can objectively observe their own dreams, this symptom is often noticed only when the situation has already advanced too far. Therefore, if your dreams have felt more intense, strange, or you've been waking up tired for no apparent reason, understand that this could be a valuable window for prevention. And get ready, because the next symptom is even more subtle. It doesn't come from the mind, but from the feet. Ninth sign. Your feet start to trip, and the brain may be the culprit. Many people think that tripping occasionally is just distraction or the result of untied shoelaces. But when it starts happening more frequently, especially on flat surfaces, inside the house, or during simple tasks, it's time to pay attention. Balance and coordination are not merely muscular tasks. In fact, these functions depend on precise communication between different brain regions, such as the cerebellum, motor cortex, and basal ganglia. When this communication begins to fail, the feet no longer respond with the same agility. Steps become shorter, less steady, and small stumbles become increasingly frequent. Studies in the Journal of Gerontology have shown that seniors with mild cognitive impairment already present changes in gait patterns, even before reporting any memory complaints. And most alarming of all, these changes in walking may be more effective at predicting dementia than some traditional cognitive tests. In other words, the body starts to scream what the mind is still trying to hide. But this can be reversed, and the best part, with simple actions. One of the most powerful is proprioception training. That complex word refers to the body's ability to sense its position in space. You can train it with easy exercises, such as standing on one leg for 30 seconds, first with your eyes open, then closed, lightly supporting yourself on a wall during the exercise helps maintain safety and confidence, especially in the early days. Mindful walks, done barefoot on safe surfaces like grass or a firm carpet, also help stimulate the sensors in your feet, which send signals directly to the brain. It's like waking up a connection that was weakening. And there are also nutrients that strengthen these communication pathways. Vitamin B12 is essential for the integrity of peripheral nerves. When it's low, which is quite common in people, over 60 symptoms like tingling, imbalance, and even burning sensations in the feet can appear. This vitamin is found in meat, eggs, milk, and dairy products. For vegetarians, supplementation is often necessary. But beware, it's not enough to eat well every now and then. A B12 deficiency can take years to show symptoms, and by the time it appears, the damage is already underway. That's why it's worth asking for a blood test and following up with a trusted doctor. If this sign is ignored, the risk is high: falls, fractures, hospitalizations, and loss of independence. And the impact goes beyond the physical, because with the fear of falling, the person reduces their activities, avoids going out, stops exercising, and this directly affects the brain. Less movement equals less oxygen to the brain and a higher risk of decline. So if your steps are less steady than they used to be, know that the problem might not be in your feet, but a cry for help coming from your mind. And in the next section, you'll discover the 10th and final sign, perhaps the most revealing of all, because it appears disguised right in the middle of your routine, but it carries a truth no one wants to see when it shows up. It means the brain is already fighting in silence. 10th sign, you start repeating the same stories and don't notice they are telling something with excitement, and you notice a look of discomfort from others. Someone says, "You already told me that," and for a second you hesitate. Did I really say that already? This kind of repetition, especially of stories, questions, or comments, in a short span of time can be one of the most revealing signs that recent memory is failing. At first, it's subtle. The person just seems distracted, repeats unintentionally, blames stress or a busy day. But in reality, what's happening is that the brain is not efficiently registering new information. The hippocampus, responsible for forming recent memories, starts being affected, and the experiences lived are not properly saved. As a result, what remains are older memories, repeated automatically, while the new fades, like smoke dot. Studies from the National Institute on Aging indicate that this frequent repetition, especially when accompanied by denial or irritation, when pointed out, is one of the most consistent markers of early Alzheimer's. But the most dangerous part is that most people only recognize it in others, and rarely in themselves. That's why paying attention to the pattern and frequency of these repetitions is so important. And if you've already noticed this in someone in your family, or even in yourself, the time to act is now. There are ways to stimulate the hippocampus to function better. One of them is to practice what we call active recording of experiences. At the end of each day, write down in a few words what happened that was most important, even if it seems irrelevant. This forces the brain to consolidate that memory. This simple practice helps increase retention and also allows you to notice repetitions more clearly. Another powerful technique is associative visualization. Whenever you learn something new or hear information, create an absurd mental image about it. For example, if you meet someone named Pedro who works with fish, imagine Pedro dressed as a giant fish. The brain loves absurdities and remembers them much more easily. Additionally, the consumption of natural antioxidants, such as those found in purple grapes, blueberries, green tea, and turmeric, can help combat free radicals that directly affect memory cells. Contraindications. Only people using blood thinners should moderate their intake of turmeric in capsule form. Other than that, these are natural, accessible, and powerful ingredients. Now, if this sign is ignored, the risk is high. Constant repetition can create impatience in family relationships, increase isolation, and accelerate decline because the brain needs to be challenged, not reinforced in automatic patterns. But if you've made it this far, it's because you're not willing to passively accept that. Because you've understood that, even with such subtle signs, prevention is still possible. And now that you know the first 10 signs of dementia, it's time to go further. Which of these signs do you find most difficult to recognize or deal with in daily life? Write it in the comments. We all want to help you. Subscribe now. It helps more people without access to doctors or scientific studies discover this information. And if you want to keep your brain strong and your legs safe, there's another video here that shows how a common fruit may be sabotaging the connection between mind and movement. That might be exactly what you've been missing to complete what you learned today. Watch it now.